ESPN's Reese Davis, College Game Days Reese Davis, has now publicly said that he has Michigan as his number one team heading into the 2023 season. Has him ahead of Georgia, ahead of Ohio State, ahead of Bama, ahead of everybody, right? And Georgia obviously coming off of back-to-back national championship runs, so they're the reigning champions heading into the season. Last season we saw Georgia was not foreseen as the best team heading into college football after they won their first national championship against Alabama, and you know what happened? They have not lost a game since. 15-0 perfect, and they beat Michigan along the way, right? So Georgia hasn't lost since the SEC championship in 2021 against Alabama. So Georgia's 17-game win streak, the first one was against Michigan. I actually just figured that out on the fly. We've seen the beat Georgia moniker that Michigan, the beat Georgia period that Michigan has during practice. But Reese Davis has them as the best team in college football heading into this season. And I think that there's definitely a conversation there. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about who the best team in college football is. And I think I've said that it's Georgia for 2 years now, right? I don't know that I've gone against that. I do think that it's go time for Michigan. So I don't think what Reese Davis is saying is crazy. And I think Georgia probably has the best roster in the sport, but is Michigan the best team? Let's talk about that a little bit. Dogstruction, Double Dogs, these are the books from each of the last two national championships that we have put together. There's pictures of Georgia beating Michigan in this one. There's pictures of Georgia beating Ohio State in this one. Michigan, I think, is the best team in the Big Ten. All right, I think that they have a lot returning. They have a quarterback returning in Cade McNamara. They've beaten Ohio State the last 2 years. They've made it to the college football playoff, not able to get to the national championship. Ohio State hasn't done the same either in the last 2 years. Look, CJ Stroud was a really good quarterback, and I don't think that Kyle McCord is as good as him. We'll see. Now, I could be wrong. Quarterbacks come in and they play really well all the time. So we'll see if Kyle McCord can, take the torch and not crash the car, right? Not crash the car that they have with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Travion Henderson, Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. Loaded offense Ohio State has. Michigan has a solid defense. Michigan has a solid offensive line. Michigan's got really good running backs. Michigan's got a good wide receiver. Michigan's got a dual-threat quarterback that is returning for his third real season. And I think that they're a good team. I do not think they're better than Georgia. I don't think they're better than Georgia. I do disagree with that. And that is Reese Davis' main point when saying that Michigan was the best team, and more specifically, his point where Michigan is probably a better team than Georgia, came at the quarterback spot, right? It came because Georgia's lost Stetson Bennett, and they have to replace Stetson Bennett. Well, they're replacing him with Carson Beck, and I think Carson Beck is going to be a really good quarterback for Georgia. And even if it ends up being Brock Vandagriff one day or this season, I think Brock Vandagriff's really good. Can those guys win Georgia games? Can those guys keep Georgia on this track of being the best team in college football with the roster around them? I think the answer is yes. But Reese is right. We don't know the answer to that question. That is his whole entire point, is we're going to find out, right? What is Carson Beck made of? Can he distribute to these offensive weapons? Is Georgia's defense as good? It's easier for me to say that than it is for someone like Reese Davis or someone like Kirk Herbstreit or any other national college football guy that you may be interested in listening to. Joel Klatt, right? I'm just rattling off guys. Josh Payne, whoever it is that you listen to. It's easier for me to say that Georgia is just the better team and Georgia's got a good quarterback situation. Georgia's this and Georgia's that, because I cover Georgia. Very specifically, I cover Georgia. I cover college football in general, but that's what I'm around. That's what I see. I've seen a lot of greatness in the last 2 years, and I think that Georgia is going to have another exceptional season. Whether that ends with a third championship in a row or not, I think Georgia's going to have great success this year. And that might be a letdown to some fans if it's not a national championship, and I get it. But I think Georgia's going to have a good year where they win 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games in that range, right? Somewhere between 11 and 15 is what we're looking at for Georgia. I think they win 12 out of those 12 regular season games. But does that make Michigan a better team, right? I do think that they have a weaker conference to go through in the Big Ten. Your heaviest hitters in there, Ohio State, Penn State, We'll see what Wisconsin does with Luke Fickell now. We'll see. Iowa's not a heavy hitter really, right? So Georgia's got an easy schedule with the SEC. Eye test wise, Georgia's probably going to look better than Michigan, right? I think Georgia's probably going to look better than Michigan eye test wise. But who's actually the better team? You go down the roster. Michigan does not have the linebacker unit that Georgia has. They do not have the tight end unit that Georgia has. Georgia's offensive line is going to be really, really good again, and that's been kind of like the one where it's like, ooh, these two programs are head to head. The running back room, give it to Michigan. Georgia's got a better running back room Michigan's got a better running back room than Georgia. I don't even question that with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Yeah, those guys are good, and I think Georgia's running back is good, not as good as it's been. Georgia's wide receivers, I think I'd take that. I'd take Georgia's secondary. I haven't done my due diligence on Michigan's defensive line, so I'm not going to comment on the defensive lines. But those other position groups, I know for sure how I feel about them. I do think Michigan has a good roster. Reese mentions that maybe Michigan's roster is not as good as Ohio State's and Georgia's and Alabama's in general, right? But it's the quarterback position that there's continuity with for Michigan, and there's not continuity for the other teams unless Alabama does have Jalen Milroe starting. That would be the only sense of continuity, right? Because he's been in the program, he's actually started a game, and that's good for Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is the quarterback. It doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be. There's two other guys that it could be. So the quarterback continuity is Reese's main point here, and I do think if it's someone's turn, to me it feels like it's Michigan's turn. If it's someone's turn at the top, people have been close. Michigan's due for a championship. Does not mean I think that that's going to happen for them. I do think Georgia's the better team still. I'm still waiting on to make my preseason just official feelings about it, but I do think Michigan makes the playoffs and has a chance to win this thing. So what Reese is saying is not crazy. Georgia's got a better roster. Ohio State probably has a better roster too. Alabama, we'll see. I'm very unsure about this Alabama team. What I feel sure about is that they're not the best team in college football, but where are they? I don't know. I think Michigan's ahead of them. But back-to-back national champions, I think heading into the season, you have to have Georgia won. After what we've seen, it feels like they're still the best team in college football. But Michigan, I do think, is their biggest competition this season. At the moment, we'll see how I feel. I think USC and Florida State, we're going to see some other conferences creep up and maybe make a play this season. Thanks for watching. Links are down below. Books are down below. The preview magazine is down below. You get that for free if you get Double Dogs.